Today's project, ball joints for the 1999 2500 Suburban. It's an old unit. It's got like 175,000 miles on it. These guys finally had enough. So show you what I got going on here with these, and then we're gonna replace these today so I can get out there and pick up that other vehicle that I was given the other day. I've got to go out and tow that thing. So we got to get to work on this guy so it's ready to pull my other car home. Show you what I got going on here. MOOG suspension parts. Usually I go with, you know, the cheapest thing I can find because I'm cheap and I don't like spending a lot of money, but MOOG, it makes really good stuff. And as far as ball joints and tie rods and things like that, I generally go with them because it's really high quality and you want these things to last another 100,000 miles. So this is what I've got on mine, the K6509 and the K6364 or 6344. That happens to be on this one. The uppers should be the same, which are these 6344s on almost all of these years of Suburbans, but that lower one, there's 3 different kinds. There's a bolting kind, there's 2 pressing kinds. All depends on what kind of lower arm you have. So I'll show you that when I get the front end apart here. I guess there's nothing left to do but get our jack and get this baby off the ground and replace some ball joints.
Yep.
So, how do you know when your ball joints have gone bad? Well, take a look over here, and you jack it up, tires off the ground, right? See all that right there? Terrible. Upper ball joint here. Lots and lots of play in it. So, it's one of the ways you can tell. This way, not so much. A little bit of play in the tie rod. This way, lots of play. Also, if you hear that rubbing right there, that is the axle tone ring rubbing on the lower ball joint. So the lower ball joint settled down enough that it's actually hitting the axle shaft tone ring. So we'll get this off, we'll change these out. Started taking this apart. Took the axle nut off here, 36mm socket. Take the big axle nut off. There, take your lower ball joint nut off. That's 27mm. Standard equivalent. And then up here on the upper ball joint, we've got these 4 bolts and nuts that pull the upper ball joint apart. So now we're gonna pull this apart here. We're gonna take these 4 bolts out like this. The upper ball joint. Oh yeah, and a 1-inch nut on the bottom nut of the upper ball joint. We're gonna take all this apart here. Those 4 bolts. New ball joints come with new bolts, new nuts, all that. There's your upper control arm. There's your upper ball joint. Oops, should be able to get this out of here now. Just had it out of there the other day. Mess. Old ball joint. So that's the upper. The lower is going to be a little tricky. The lower, this whole hub has to go down, which means I got to pull this axle half shaft out of here, which is why I took the nut off of it and get that out of our way. Now, this to drop. Watch your cables and lines here too when you're doing it like this. There are other ways. I might have to take this half shaft right out of the truck just so it's completely out of my way. I don't know if this is gonna work like this. Yeah. Maybe now. Maybe. Might be easier just to get it out of my way. This well, after significant amounts of persuasion. That lower ball joint is finally out of there. I've cleaned it up with a little bit of emery cloth, got the scale and whatnot out of there. There's your lower ball joint right there. Yeah, sits in there, obviously, goes up in the bottom of your lower control arm, right like that. And by persuasion, I mean a little, like half, whatever it is, 5 pound mallet, something like that, 2.5. Beat the top of it down. Now, yes, they do make ball joint pullers. Very nice units. I've seen them. I've used them. I don't have one, so didn't use that. Now we're going to go put the new one in there. And the only thing to bear in mind with your new ball joint is the orientation of the grease fitting. This little notch here in the back of the control arm, that's where the grease fitting is designed to go through, right there. So we got to make sure the hole for our grease fitting here. See, our new one is over in the box. The new one is pressed in place. In my case, it may be beat in place, but it's pressed up in there. There's your new one. It's got a bunch of grooves to hold it in place. And there's your hole to thread in your Zerk fitting. So that hole needs to line up with that notch. This is what holds it in high strength retaining gel Loctite that they give you with it. Special Loctite supposedly for slip fitted parts with a less than a 15,000th gap. So we shall see. Broke down and I got a ball joint press, because while you can get those lower ball joints out with a big hammer, getting them back in there is not really going to work. So I've got the ball joint press set up here. Got our lower adapter, a sleeve, because that ball joint's sticking down actually through the bottom. It's got a hole, it goes right through the bottom. And you got your upper plate, and we're going to put the impact on there, and we're going to squeeze that guy right in there. You do have to remove that front half shaft. You got to unbolt it from the flange inside there. It can't come out of there unless you pull out your sway bar end link. So, but if you remove the flange, you can just get it up out of your way, so you can use your ball joint press in the bottom. So, anyways, on with the mayhem. We're gonna press that guy in, and it'll be smooth sailing from there.
Ooh, so shiny. Alright, there's the new upper ball joint in place. Comes with the 4 new bolts and the 4 new nuts, and those are a locking type. They're a pinch nut, so they're actually got some running torque. They're supposed to be torqued at 20 foot-pounds on those, but the running torque is probably close to 20 foot-pounds. So do as you see fit. If you happen to have a fairly calibrated air socket, just run them down till they're tight. I mean, really, honestly, there's no preload, there's no bearings, there's no nothing there. They just need to hold them in place and not fall apart, right? So there's the new upper. Here's my shiny new lower down there. You can kind of see it. It's kind of hard to see, but actually I kind of do want to show you here. See, there's that grease fitting, and that's why it's got to be pointed in that direction. And you can see there is not a lot of clearance in between that axle shaft and that ball joint. Part of the reason is that ball joint press wouldn't quite push it all the way up in there. It'll probably seat when some weight gets put on it, or I drive this beast down the road, because it does weigh a couple of tons. So that lower ball joint is supposed to be torqued to 50 foot-pounds. I did torque that. I do have a torque wrench. I do torque things sometimes. And then you got your big nut there for your axle. Put that back on. I know everybody's gonna be like, oh, you can't run that down with an impact. Well, I will torque it once I get the wheel back on there, because I don't have any center caps on these wheels, so I can do that. However, I will say that 2 years ago, I tore this apart. I did not have my torque wrench at the time. I ran it down with my impact to Guten tight. It's been running around the truck for 2 years. That wheel bearing has not failed. So the cautions, in the wheel bearing stuff, I'll say, don't torque that down with the impact, and torque it to a specific load and preload it and yada yada. But I mean, it's made it 2 years for me run down with a torque wrench or with the impact. So we're gonna go on to the other side and get that all done and get this thing back on the road, because time's a wasting.
Been working on the other side over here. Just figured I'd give you a show of how I set this up. I got a big block. I set that hub and rotor and everything on that once I get it off the bottom. The challenge is dropping it off that bottom ball joint and then getting the axle out of the center hub. The axle won't slide out of the hub if the ball joint, the lower ball joint nut is off and you've loosened it up, it's settled down. It has to be up on there. So you really need to get the axle slid out of the center hub with the lower ball joint still attached. It helps to remove the upper though. Take that bolt off the upper and slide the upper out so you can pivot it away to give you enough room to slide the axle out. Of course, I disconnected the axle at the inside, but that's just kind of the setup there. There's our brand new upper, our brand new lower. That Zerk fitting doesn't come in the lower because you can't press it in with that on, so you got to thread it in afterwards. It doesn't really seem to have any threads actually in that hole. It just taps itself in there. You just start it just a tiny bit and then just run it in. That lower boot can be a pain to get on. It's got a metal reinforced lip, and you kind of pop it on one side, and then I used a pair of channel locks to grab this edge like right here and squeeze it up on the other side to get it to go on, because it was I had to fight with it. It was a pain. But there's everything installed on this side. We're gonna throw this all back together now. One other note, those upper ball joints there come with brand new hardware, of course. So I put that in, of course, torqued with my air ratchet. Of course, it's 20 foot-pounds. I mean, come on, it's not that much. But the old hardware that came out of there, it's perfectly fine. It works great. And it's hardened steel that they use, of course, because this is a suspension component. They want it snapping off. So those I save. Bolts, nuts, save them, put them together, thread them on each other, throw them in the old nut bin, bolt bin, for later, because I do a lot of work, and eventually you're going to snap a bolt somewhere and you're going to want a replacement, and you don't want to run to the store to grab one because that's a pain in the butt. You got a big bag of bolts, especially ones that come off of Chevys and or Fords, but a lot of Chevys, they have the same size bolts. They're metric threaded. You just keep them. If you have extras, you do an engine change, you have a spare car, you're pulling out bolts, you don't need to reuse them. Save them. They come in handy. So let's get this back together. Well, that's gonna about do it here for this guy. Got everything done, buttoned up. Took about 4 hours, I suppose, to get it all done. But yeah, it's all back in. I'm beat. Gotta go get a shower change and actually go to the job that pays me money, since I was just working on my truck today. I'm not making any money. But I'm keeping my wife happy because she can drive it again now. So catch you guys later. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the videos. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, all that jazz. And I will be having something on this Jetta over here. Right there. That guy. Yeah. We're going to do something with that as soon as I get my hone in. We're going to hone that cylinder out. I got my used piston, my used rod. And we're going to try and throw that thing back together and see if it runs and how long it runs. All right. Catch you later.